After flaming out spectacularly in the playoffs, the Philadelphia 76ers have followed that up with what has easily been the team's worst offseason of the last 11 years, which is saying something because literally every offseason has had some crazy and unprecedented bullshit happen to this team. So to say that this offseason is easily the worst out of all of them is actually pretty nuts. The slander has been much deserved this summer. If you're an NBA YouTuber, all you had to do was make a video about how Joel Embiid was a failure, how his MVP was fake, even though he actually deserved it, teams that could trade for Embiid, or the Sixers being a joke. I guarantee you if you made a video like that, the algorithm was going to find your video. But rather than doing that, I actually, dare I say, want to talk about some of the things I'm actually looking forward to watching from the Sixers this season. Yes, there are still like 3 or 4 positive things to look forward to. One of them, who is easily the biggest ray of hope of them all, is Tyrese Maxey, the dynamic guard who is now entering his 4th season with the Sixers. Despite playing for Doc Rivers, a coach who notoriously hates playing young players and is uncreative as hell, Maxey has developed at a rate that is impressive and, quite frankly, an outlier in many ways. With James Harden likely not taking the court this season, Tyrese Maxey for the first time in his career is going to take the reins of being the primary ball handler on the perimeter for this team. One of the chief reasons many fans were in the camp of not bringing Harden back, including me, is because we want to see what Tyrese Maxey could look like as the lead ball handler. Considering how young he is, the work ethic he has, the leaps he has already made in every season of his young career, and the fact that he is now going to be guided by an actual creative coach in Nick Nurse, it's hard to not see why many people wanted to see number 1 option Tyrese Maxey. I'm high on Tyrese Maxey's ceiling. The Sixers will finally have a young, athletic, and fast dynamic guard as the number 1 perimeter scoring option. It's tough for me not to be as high on Maxey as I already am, because based off what I've seen, I think Maxey is going to be a star, and this upcoming season is going to be a big step for him in that direction. The first thing we need to talk about with Tyrese Maxey is his flat-out outlier and freakish growth as a three-point shooter. With the Kentucky Wildcats, Maxey shot 29.2% from the three-point line, and even the nerdiest of draft nerds, while they maybe saw him being a good three-point shooter in the NBA with his compact form and the fact that he was a good free throw shooter in college, I don't think anybody saw him becoming an elite three-point shooter at any point in his career, let alone right off the bat, essentially. Tyrese Maxey has now taken 781 career three-point attempts and is now a career 41.4% three-point shooter. He's a flat-out elite shooter. He's proved it over 2 years now, especially the last 2 years where he's been the starter. And, in his second year, he obviously got a big opportunity with Ben Simmons deciding to quit on the Sixers. So Maxey has been able to not only play off of Harden and Embiid to show off his off-the-ball shooting capabilities. His pull-up shooting has been one of the bigger developments because that is a requirement for a combo guard in today's NBA. And Maxey, you'll see it up on the screen, Maxey is an elite pull-up three-point shooter, and he's pretty elite off the catch. So with Maxey having on-ball responsibilities or more on-ball responsibilities this upcoming season, I'm actually looking forward to seeing how he's also going to incorporate his off-ball game, because he has spent the majority of his career playing off of two stars, and now Maxey is going to be the lead ball handler on the perimeter, and while he is going to have more responsibility, I still wonder how Nick Nurse is going to blend in Maxey's off-ball game as well, and I'll explain this later in the video, but I'm also excited to see how Nick Nurse is going to build an offense around a two-man game of Maxey and Joel Embiid. But Maxey's outlier development as a three-point shooter has unlocked all types of possibilities for his ultimate ceiling, because he is quick, he is fast, he can get to the cup, though he needs to work on his finishing, and him attacking closeouts has just been deadly the last 2 years. The work Maxey has put in to become an elite three-point shooter has been astounding, and with him having a bigger role as the lead ball handler this upcoming season, his shooting just adds more layers to what his offensive game could be. Now, some are probably rightfully so questioning what Maxey and a team with Maxey as the lead ball handler would look like. I would say that while the sample size is small, there have been times where either Harden has been hurt or Harden goes to the bench and it's just Maxey as the primary ball handler. I'd say the results have been good. Well, last season at least, because the second year it was all kind of muddled until, the Harden trade happened, the whole Simmons saga, etc. But look at Maxey's numbers last season when Harden was not playing. You can see the scoring has increased, the assist increased, the rebounds even increased, and it was still relative to his usual efficiency. So while it was only 13 games without James Harden, there were other times where Maxey and Embiid were on the court and Harden was off the court, and you'll see more numbers on the screen of what Maxey and Embiid lineups looked like when James Harden was off the floor. So there is something to this and something the Sixers can put in practice, something Nick Nurse can look at from this team over the last 2 or 3 years, because I imagine Nick Nurse did a lot of prep work and is doing prep work going into this season. I'm sure Nick Nurse is looking at these numbers and thinking, what things can I do to put Maxey in this position and to pull the most out of Maxey every time? Because it's proven that Maxey can handle a little bit more responsibility. This season, if Maxey could put up a stat line that is similar to the one he had when James Harden didn't play last year, the Sixers are in business, because that means Maxey has taken yet another leap and he is handling the responsibility comfortably. I know there are probably going to be some rough patches. Again, it will be his first time being the primary ball handler on an NBA team, but with Maxey's work ethic, his confidence, I have a good feeling that Maxey is going to shine this year. I went back and looked over most of Maxey's assists from this season and his turnovers, and there is some work for Maxey to do in the playmaking department, but in terms of being able to make the read and the pass, Maxey has shown that he can do it. Now, whether he can do it consistently and consistently read defenses correctly to not have a lot of turnovers, that remains to be seen. And again, he's 22 years old, so there's going to be some mistakes, but that's all the more reason to give Maxey lead ball handler reps and have him be the primary ball handling option on the perimeter, because you need those reps in the pick and roll. He needs to learn how to change speeds and have change of direction when he's running pick and rolls, because like all young players, they have one gear, sometimes two. Maxey, I think, needs to find that second gear in between the first and third gear where he is, pacing himself, controlling himself with footwork and things of that nature. And the game just needs to slow down for him so he can be able to make reads more consistently. But he makes passes to the corner like this one up on the screen. He is able to, it's good to have somebody like Joel Embiid as your teammate running pick and roll with, because that's an easy big target to throw the ball to. And Maxey has already shown a little bit that he can weaponize his speed and throw a lob on the move accurately. So that's another positive of Maxey and his passing. But Maxey has a lot of growth to make in the playmaker area. The good thing is, he has shown flashes of him being able to do it. Now, it's just a matter of getting consistent repetition. One of the other reasons I'm excited for Maxey being the lead ball handler is because I'm sure Nick Nurse is cooking up ways to build an offense around a Joel Embiid and Tyrese Maxey two-man game. And since Maxey is the second best player on the team, I'm sure there's going to be a lot of actions involving those two. And, despite the baseless takes and jokes about Embiid being this awful teammate and how players get worse around him, which is not true, I'm looking forward to seeing Nick Nurse use Joel Embiid all over the floor and bringing back some actions that were used a lot early in the Joel Embiid era under head coach Brett Brown, or former head coach Brett Brown. The Sixers were one of the preeminent dribble handoff teams in the NBA. They ran a lot more motion and, movement under Brett Brown than Doc Rivers, unsurprisingly. But remember the Joel Embiid, JJ Redick two-man game and how potent that was? And that was with 34-year-old JJ Redick, who was basically a unitasker being an elite shooter off movement. And then the dribble handoff slowly evolved into the Jimmy Butler, Joel Embiid two-man game, dribble handoff, or pick and roll. With Maxey now being unquestionably the second best player on the team and the most dynamic perimeter option on the team, I'm looking forward to seeing Nick Nurse bring a little bit of the dribble handoff game back, because there are times last year where they actually did run a dribble handoff with Embiid and Maxey, and it produced great results. The combination of Maxey's speed, his shooting, is just going to do wonders in dribble handoff action with Embiid, because Maxey can now get downhill even faster and easier, and it'll help improve Tyrese Maxey's finishing around the rim, which is something he needs to improve on. He needs to shoot like 65% around the rim to be an effective finisher, and I think playing off of Embiid will help some of that. Maxey can also pop out for three because he is such a good pull-up shooter and off-the-catch shooter. The dribble handoff between Maxey and Embiid can produce so many options, and it'll even probably bring back the fake handoff quarterback keeper dribble handoff play that Embiid had some nasty dunks earlier in his career based off that action. So I'm actually really excited to see what Nick Nurse creates offensively around a potential two-man game between Embiid and Tyrese Maxey. I mentioned it earlier, but lineups where it was just Joel Embiid and Tyrese Maxey on the floor and James Harden off the court produced a lot of great results. The Sixers were a plus 12 in terms of net rating when it was lineups with Embiid and Maxey on the court without Harden. The offensive rating was off the charts, and the defensive rating still stayed really good because Embiid is an incredible defender. Of course, you can also run Joel Embiid and Tyrese Maxey pick and roll, and I look forward to seeing that being used more often this season. There's just a lot of good things I can see Nick Nurse creating out of this. Unfortunately, the roster looks a little wonky right now, and with Harden still not being traded, the Sixers can't fill out the rest of their roster with actual pieces they would get from a potential Harden trade. So that part is frustrating, but at least in terms of a dynamic two-man game, we can at least see Embiid and Maxey grow their partnership in that regard at least. Now, how big of a star can Tyrese Maxey be? That remains to be seen. I think as the season went along, he improved as a defender, even though he is still small and will still be attacked. It wasn't through effort. I know Nick Nurse has probably some ideas of how to turn Maxey into a plus defender on that end of the floor, considering he has worked with Fred VanVleet. And Maxey's a hard worker, so I have no doubt he is working on those areas to improve his overall game so he could be a more complete player, because Lord knows do the Sixers need it. But if there is anyone who can be a ray of shining hope through what has been an absolute shitstorm this offseason, Tyrese Maxey is the guy, and I look forward to seeing him play this year.